The courtroom was hushed, every eye fixed on the defense table. Sunlight filtered through tall, arched windows, casting long shadows on the polished wood. At the center sat Avery Brooks, a brilliant civil rights attorney in her early 30s, her dark skin glowing, natural coils of hair pulled back into a no-nonsense bun. She wore a tailored navy suit and held her chin high, her brown eyes calm yet steely. Across from her, the judge, a stern man in his late 60s, peered over gold-rimmed glasses. Judge voice echoing, "Ms. Brooks, the court has yet to see any compelling reason to allow your motion. Do you have anything further?" Avery rose. Her voice, when it came, was measured but fierce. "Avery, Your Honor, I appreciate the court's time, but today's hearing isn't just about legal technicalities. It's about justice for my client, Ms. Camille Thompson, who spent 6 years behind bars for a crime she didn't commit." A murmur rippled through the gallery. Camille Thompson, a soft-spoken black teacher, sat a row behind Avery, clutching a folded handkerchief. Avery reached into her briefcase and produced a worn photograph. Avery softing. This was taken the morning Camille was arrested. Notice her hands relaxed, no signs of struggle. Yet authorities painted her as a violent offender based on a coerced confession. She paused, letting the weight of the image settle. "Avery, we have new evidence. Time-stamped security footage from a nearby store that completely contradicts the prosecution's timeline. I ask the court to admit this footage and grant a new trial." The judge leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Judge Brooks, you understand the prosecution will object on grounds of timeliness and chain of custody." Avery, quiet smile. "Your Honor, justice delayed shouldn't mean justice denied. I'm prepared to address every objection." Outside, sunbeams danced on dust motes, hinting that this courtroom drama was only just beginning, and that Avery Brooks was ready to wage a battle far greater than any she'd faced before. The courtroom doors clanged as the prosecution's lead attorney, Mr. Wallace Reed, rose from his seat. His tailored gray suit and crisp tie belied the cold certainty in his voice. "Reed, Your Honor, Ms. Brooks's motion is untimely. These new videos were available years ago. The defense has no excuse for their delay." Avery's eyes locked onto Reed's, unblinking. Avery, soft but firm. "With all due respect, counsel, these recordings were sequestered in a private security archive, unknown to us until last month. The chain of custody is intact as established by affidavit of custodian, Ms. Helena Price." Reed's lip curled. "Reed, affidavits aren't footage. And where was Ms. Brooks when this evidence lay hidden? In her office, chasing headlines." Avery inhaled, glanced at Camille's trembling hands, then looked back to the judge. "Avery, yesterday afternoon I received a call from Ms. Price herself. She supplied the raw files, timestamps, and metadata. We verified authenticity under oath. This court should view truth over technicality." The judge tapped his gavel. "Judge, bring in the footage." A clerk wheeled a large monitor to the front. The courtroom lights dimmed. On screen, a grainy security camera glow revealed Camille walking calmly down a suburban sidewalk. Timestamp June 10th, 2XX, 9:14 p.m. No struggle. No sign of a weapon, just the soft echo of her heels on the pavement. Then a flash of blue light, an unmarked sedan screeched to a halt. 2 officers emerged, arms raised, not in greeting, but in accusation. Camille paused, confusion etched on her face. The camera cut away. Murmurs rose in the gallery. Even Reed shifted in his seat. Avery pressed play again. The footage resumed, the officers moving too quickly, Camille's hands at her sides, her expression pleading. Minutes later, she was dragged toward the car, her protests drowned by the cruiser's loudspeaker. Avery quietly, "Your Honor, this evidence not only contradicts the confession, it shatters the entire prosecution narrative. My client never resisted. She never had a weapon. She was framed." The judge stared at the flickering screen, then slowly raised his gaze to the room. "Judge, I will review this footage in camera. Court is adjourned until tomorrow morning." As the gavel struck, Avery allowed herself a single measured breath, knowing the real fight had only just begun. The next morning, the courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Reporters jostled for position. The air crackled with the promise of justice. Avery slipped into her seat at the defense table, Camille beside her offering a reassuring squeeze of her hand. Across the aisle, Reed consulted furiously with his team. Avery allowed her gaze to drift over to the gallery, where Camille's sister Janelle Thompson and their aging mother wiped tears from their eyes. This wasn't just a legal battle, it was a family's fight to reclaim a stolen life. Moments later, the judge called the court to order. Avery stood and nodded to the bailiff, who escorted Miss Helena Price, the security archivist, to the witness stand. Under oath, Helena recounted how she'd uncovered the hidden footage during a routine data audit, only to discover that months of video had been misfiled and suppressed by unknown hands. When asked, she confirmed the chain of custody. Every export, file hash, and timestamp had been meticulously verified. Reed rose in objection, but the judge overruled him, insisting the jury view Helena's testimony. As Helena detailed the archive's secrecy, Avery felt the momentum shift. Outside, the sun climbed higher, its light now streaming through the courtroom windows and illuminating a path toward truth. The jury's attention snapped back to the front as Avery gathered her exhibits. She rose, walking slowly to the evidence table, where rows of manila folders lay neatly arranged. Avery to the jury. Members of the jury, what you saw yesterday is only part of the story. Now I will show you exactly how Camille Thompson was framed. She held up Exhibit D, the original police incident report. Avery. According to this report, Miss Thompson confessed to armed robbery within minutes of her arrest. A confession so voluntary, the police claim, that no Miranda warning was necessary. She flipped through pages, the jury leaning in. Avery. Yet there's no signature on this page. She cross-referenced with Exhibit E, the arresting officer's own daily log. Avery. Officer Grant's logbook, also part of your evidence, records that he arrived on scene but the fabricated confession is time-stamped 9:10 p.m. Avery. Listen to this operator's log. She records Camille's screams in the background at night. The confession was allegedly given before those screams. Avery paused, letting the contradiction sink in. Avery, voice tightening. In other words, the so-called confession was backdated, fabricated to match a narrative, not reality. My client's voice does not appear on any recording because she never spoke those words. She walked back to her seat as the judge's gavel tapped softly. On the defense table, Camille exhaled, relief washing across her face. Judge, the court will admit Exhibits D, E, and F into evidence. Counsel for the defense may proceed. Avery nodded and turned toward the jury again, her tone soft but resolute. Avery. Ladies and gentlemen, we will prove not only that Camille did not confess, but that a confession was manufactured to justify her wrongful imprisonment. Tomorrow you will hear from forensic audio expert Lena Holmes, who will confirm the voice on that confession tape is not my client's. As she sat down, the sunlight shifted once more, bright, unwavering, casting a hopeful glow over Camille's tear-streaked face. The paper trails of deceit were unraveling, one contradiction at a time. The next morning, the courtroom was charged with quiet anticipation. In the gallery, Camille's family leaned forward, Janelle gripping her mother's hand as if bracing for impact. Avery sat poised, eyes fixed on the witness box. Lena Holmes, a renowned forensic audio analyst, adjusted her glasses and spoke into the microphone. Her calm, measured voice filled the silent room. Dr. Holmes, I have examined the alleged confession recording and compared it to verified samples of Thompson's voice, including her 911 call and interview with police. She gestured to a large screen behind her. Two waveforms appeared side by side, one labeled 911 call, the other confession tape. Dr. Holmes, notice the pitch modulation here. She highlighted a peak in the first waveform, and here she tapped a crest on the second. They simply do not match. The waveform of the confession tape bore subtle irregularities, the vocal fry, the cadence of speech, the subtle breath patterns, all inconsistent with Camille's verified recordings. Holmes, using spectral analysis, we can see formant frequencies. The unique resonant frequencies of a human voice differ by over 15%. In layman's terms, the person speaking on this tape is not Ms. Thompson. Murmurs echoed through the courtroom. Avery nodded encouragement at Camille. Even Judge Monroe leaned forward, curiosity and disbelief in his eyes. Dr. Holmes, furthermore, background noise on the tape, an air conditioner hum, does not match the precinct's sound profile. It was added later to give false authenticity. Avery rose and addressed the jury, her voice filled with both compassion and conviction. Avery, ladies and gentlemen, the prosecution built 6 years of incarceration on a recording that was never heard. Today, science has proven Camille's voice was replaced, her words invented, fabrications used to justify a crime she did not commit. She turned to the judge. Avery, I ask this court to vacate her conviction immediately and set this case for a full retrial, or better yet, release her unconditionally. Judge Monroe tapped his gavel, eyes still on the glowing waveform. Judge, given this new forensic evidence, I will grant a writ of habeas corpus. Ms. Thompson is to be released on her own recognizance pending retrial. Court is adjourned. As the gavel fell, a soft gasp rose from the gallery. Camille's shoulders slumped, tears of relief and disbelief spilling down her cheeks. Avery crossed to her side, enveloping her in a brief, heartfelt embrace. Outside, sunlight glinted off the courthouse steps, as if heralding Camille's first breath of true freedom in 6 long years. The courtroom reconvened. Under a tense hush, from the prosecution table, Mr. Reed stood and called his next witness, Officer Marcus Grant, the arresting officer. Grant strode to the stand in fresh uniform, badge gleaming, posture rigid. Reed to judge. Your Honor, Officer Grant was first on the scene. He will confirm Miss Thompson's behavior and the validity of her confession. Judge, proceed. Grant swore the oath, then faced the jury with solemn gravity. Grant, on June 10th, at approximately 9:12 p.m., I detained Miss Thompson on suspicion of armed robbery. She appeared agitated, uncooperative, and verbally confessed within minutes. He paused, letting his words settle. Many jurors shifted uncomfortably. Avery rose, cool and composed. Avery, Officer Grant, you did not read my client her Miranda rights before questioning, correct? Grant, firm, correct. Avery, yet you obtained a confession. Under Supreme Court precedent, any statement without Miranda advisement is inadmissible. Grant's jaw tightened. Avery, furthermore, by your own report, you arrived 5 minutes after the radio dispatch at 9:17 p.m. How could you have taken a confession at 9:10 p.m.? Grant hesitated, sweat beading at his temple. Grant, the times there may have been a delay in my log. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Avery pressed on. Avery, so you adjusted your own records to support a narrative. You changed official times to justify a coerced confession. Grant's face paled. He glanced at Reed, who flinched. Avery, Your Honor, the prosecution's foundation has crumbled. Officer Grant admits he manipulated evidence. Judge Stern, Officer Grant, your testimony is struck from the record. The court will consider disciplinary action for perjury. Bailiff, escort the witness. As Grant stepped down, defeated, Avery returned to her seat. Camille exhaled, tears glimmering. Justice's scale had tipped, one more lie exposed. One step closer to true redemption. The courtroom fell into a stunned silence as Officer Grant was escorted away. Camille's family exchanged hopeful glances, yet Avery remained vigilant. She knew Reed had one final card to play. Rising with a heavy sigh, Mr. Reed addressed the court. Reed, Your Honor, despite this setback, the prosecution calls Ms. Elena Cortez, lead investigator on the Thompson case, to testify to the validity of the initial evidence. Elena Cortez, a seasoned detective known for her steely resolve, took the stand. She carried a manila folder stamped confidential and spoke with measured confidence. Reed, Detective Cortez, you organized the lineup in which Miss Thompson was identified, yes. Cortez, yes. Reed, and Miss Thompson was the only individual selected by the witness. Correct. Cortez, yes. Avery stood, eyes narrowing. Avery, Detective, was the lineup conducted blindly? Cortez trod carefully. Cortez, no standard procedure at the time allowed officer presence during identification. Avery, so the officer could have. Reed, interrupting. Objection, counsel, this is immaterial. Judge, overruled. Detective, answer the question. Cortez hesitated, then nodded. Cortez, it's possible an officer gave nonverbal cues. A murmur swept through the jury box. Avery pressed on. Avery, detective, were any other suspects included who resembled my client? Cortez glanced down. Cortez, there were supposed to be 6, but 2 were removed due to administrative error. Avery's voice rang out clear and cold. Avery, 2 black women, correct. 1 removed after initial police review. Cortez swallowed. Cortez, that is correct. Avery, so the lineup was compromised. Witness influence was possible. 2 potential fillers were removed. Detective, this identification cannot meet the standards of reliable eyewitness testimony. The judge tapped his gavel. Judge, Detective Cortez, your testimony is noted. Jurors, you will disregard any lineup identification as unreliable. As Cortez stepped down, the prosecution's final witness had unraveled. The courtroom braced for the closing arguments, where Avery would deliver the knockout blow. The air in the courtroom crackled as Avery rose for her closing. She moved to the lectern, briefcase in hand, and let her gaze sweep across the jury. 12 faces now lined with doubt and empathy. Avery, calmly, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have heard testimony from the prosecution's key witnesses. You have seen the security footage proving Miss Thompson never resisted arrest. You have learned that her so-called confession was fabricated, her voice manipulated by digital forensics. You witnessed an officer admit to falsifying times and a detective confirm a tainted lineup. She paused, letting each revelation resonate. Avery, what remains? A mountain of doubt not only about Camille Thompson's guilt, but about the integrity of the entire process that condemned her. She flipped through a final exhibit, an image of Camille teaching children, smiling brightly. Avery, this is who they tried to erase. A devoted teacher, a pillar in her community, vilified by lies. Miss Thompson's life was stolen by those entrusted to uphold the law. Today you have the chance to return it. Her voice rose with conviction. Avery, I ask you, will you convict a woman when every piece of evidence shows she was wronged? Or will you heed the call of true justice, lift the weight of a wrongful conviction, and set Camille Thompson free? She sat. The courtroom held its breath. Outside, the sun climbed higher, its light now a promise of redemption. The jurors filed into their room, the heavy door thudding closed behind them. Inside, 12 strangers became guardians of fate. They unsealed the verdict form and took seats around the long oak table. Juror 1, an elderly woman, folded her hands. Juror 1, all that testimony. I've never seen so many contradictions. Juror 4, a school teacher, leaned forward. Juror 4, she's a teacher herself. I saw her first day on those tapes, calm, caring. How could she be violent? A younger Juror 7 spoke up. Juror 7, and that officer admitting he lied on the stand. That's perjury. They debated the standard of beyond a reasonable doubt. Every point Avery had raised, fabricated confession, tampered lineup, contradictory timelines, stacked up like dominoes. Outside, Camille sat with Janelle, their hands clasped, eyes fixed on the door. Each tick of the clock echoed hope and fear, until finally a quiet knock. The bailiff's voice. Bailiff ready for the verdict. Camille inhaled, braced. The jurors re-entered the courtroom. Each face was solemn, weighted with the gravity of their decision. Avery rose, heart steady but pounding beneath her tailored suit. Camille reached for her sister's hand, knuckles white. The judge looked down at the foreperson. Judge, has the jury reached a verdict? The foreperson stood, clearing her throat. Foreperson, we have, Your Honor. A hush fell. Every spectator leaned forward. Judge, please read the verdict. Foreperson, pausing deliberately. We, the jury, find the defendant, Camille Thompson, not guilty on all counts. A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. Tears sprang to Camille's eyes. Avery allowed herself a small, triumphant smile. Judge softly, Miss Thompson, you are free to go. Camille rose, shaking joy and relief warring across her face. She embraced Avery, her attorney who had become her champion. The gallery erupted in applause. Family members wept. Even Judge Monroe nodded, a rare smile breaking his usually stern visage. Outside the courthouse steps, sunlight bathed Camille in its warmth. Reporters clamored with microphones. News cameras swirled around her like a cyclone. But Camille only had eyes for Avery and her family. Camille, voice trembling. I don't know how to thank you. Avery embracing her. No more thanks. Today you get your life back. Janelle enveloped Camille in a hug, while their mother dabbed at tears. The world watched as this small family, once broken by injustice, became whole again. Avery stepped forward, addressing the press. Avery, this case shows that truth and persistence can overcome the darkest lies. We must always question those in power and fight for justice. Cameras flashed. The headline would read, "Teacher exonerated after 6 years, a victory for justice." In the days following the trial, the fallout rippled through the legal community and beyond. Internal investigations launched into the police department. Officer Grant was suspended pending review. Detective Cortez faced an ethics board. Avery returned to her small office. The same walls that had once felt cramped now seemed spacious with promise. She opened her laptop to news articles praising the verdict, but also calling for broader reform. A video clip played, President Trump's brief televised address, acknowledging the jury's decision but warning against undermining law enforcement. Social media exploded with debate. Avery leaned back, eyes steely. Avery to herself. One victory isn't enough. The system is still broken. She picked up her phone, dialing a number she knew by heart. Avery, Senator Reynolds, I have an idea for a bill. Weeks later, in a chamber of Capitol Hill, Avery stood beside Senator Reynolds, a sympathetic ally. They introduced the Thompson Justice Act, aiming to tighten eyewitness identification procedures, mandate body camera release timelines, and strengthen forensic guardrails against fabricated evidence. As legislators listened, Avery spoke to the gathered press. Avery, no one should lose years of their life to lies. Congress must act to protect the innocent. News cameras rolled. Camille sat in the front row, hugging Janelle, pride gleaming in her eye. Across the nation, advocates hailed the bill as a milestone. Months passed. The Thompson Justice Act passed committee and headed to a vote. Meanwhile, Avery's firm took on other wrongful conviction cases, inspired by their landmark victory. Camille returned to teaching, her classroom decorated with welcome back messages. Students asked endless questions about courage and fairness. One afternoon, Avery visited Camille's classroom unannounced. The children cheered. Camille introduced her to wide-eyed students. Camille, this is Avery Brooks. She fought for me. Avery smiled, addressing the kids. Avery, remember, always speak truth. Always question power and always stand up for what's right. The children nodded solemnly, absorbing the lessons of justice. On a crisp morning, at the steps of the state capitol, a crowd gathered. Senator Reynolds unveiled a bronze statue of Camille Thompson, the teacher who refused to be erased. Avery, Camille, Janelle, and their mother stood hand in hand. The plaque read, "In honor of Camille Thompson, whose truth and perseverance restored justice, and whose legacy will light the path for generations." Avery pressed Camille's hand. Camille smiled through tears. "Camille, we did it. Avery, this is just the beginning." As the sun rose over the Capitol dome, truth and justice stood tall, casting a promise that no voice, no matter how marginalized, would ever be silenced again. Weightlessness wrapped around Naomi like a second skin. The capsule floated effortlessly in Earth's orbit, the blue planet spinning below, vast, beautiful, and distant. Inside the capsule, everything seemed calm. Readings stable, systems nominal, but tension simmered beneath the surface. After a brief systems check, Commander Ortega unstrapped himself and drifted toward the center console. "Mission Control is patching in a priority message," he said, voice tight. Naomi furrowed her brow. Priority messages in orbit were rare and almost never good. The screen flickered, and encrypted transmission blinked into existence. The words hit her like a punch. Security breach, compromised manifest, possible tampering pre-launch. Be alert. The crew exchanged stunned glances. "Tampering, up here, now." Ortega's voice was grim. "Secure comms only, full internal sweep. No outside transmission until we know more." The weight of the situation settled over Naomi. Someone had tried to sabotage this mission before it even left the ground, and now, drifting 250 miles above Earth, they might still be in danger. Naomi's mind raced. Who? Why? And was it connected to everything that had happened back on Earth? She reached for the comms panel, locking down external signals. No one spoke. Only the hum of the ventilation system filled the capsule, cold, mechanical, and oddly menacing. Outside, the stars glittered with deceptive calm. Inside, a storm was building. And this time, Naomi knew. The real fight wasn't gravity, it was survival. Inside the capsule, silence had never been so loud. The crew floated in uneasy stillness. No one said it aloud, but everyone was thinking the same thing. If there was tampering, was someone on board responsible? Commander Ortega initiated a manual system sweep. Michael Harris reviewed life support logs. Naomi focused on the flight control backups, but her mind was elsewhere. Something didn't add up. The timing of the smear campaign, the political pressure, and now a possible breach. After launch, this wasn't random. This was orchestrated, and whoever was behind it wasn't done yet. Suddenly, a low beep echoed from the navigation panel. Naomi floated over. Her eyes scanned the alert. A minuscule deviation in orbit drift trajectory. Barely detectable. She tapped the manual thruster override. No response. A chill ran through her. "Commander, I've got a nav anomaly," she said, her voice calm but clipped. Ortega joined her, frowning. "That's not atmospheric drag. That's correctional thrust being overridden." Michael's voice cut in from the rear module. "Guys, one of the backup propellant valves just activated on its own." They all froze. 3 independent systems had reported changes. None of them authorized. Ortega's voice dropped to a whisper. "We've got a backdoor in the software." Naomi clenched her fists. This ship is being remotely manipulated. In orbit. With no way to eject. No way to escape. And one terrifying possibility. Whoever had tried to stop her from launching had followed her into space. Commander Ortega immediately initiated emergency lockdown protocols. "Shut down all external comms except for our hardline with mission control," he ordered. Naomi floated quickly to the backup systems panel, her heart hammering in her chest. They needed control fast. But as her fingers danced across the manual override, the screen flashed an ominous red message. "Access denied. Remote command active." Naomi's stomach dropped. They were locked out from their own ship. Michael cursed under his breath. "This is bad. Real bad." Naomi's mind raced, pulling from every emergency procedure she had ever drilled. Whoever had coded this backdoor wasn't some amateur hacker. This was professional, military-grade, strategic. She looked at Ortega, who met her gaze grimly. "This isn't just sabotage," Naomi said quietly. "This is a hijack. Down on Earth, inside mission control." Alarms began flashing across the board. The operators shouted across the room. "Unauthorized orbital drift detected. Propellant reserves depleting on non-scheduled burns." Elon Musk himself rushed onto the floor, taking the headset from a stunned engineer. "Patch me through now." Inside the capsule, Ortega's comm buzzed. "Crew of Falcon 9, this is mission control. Confirm your ability to override." Ortega replied, voice clipped. "Negative. Remote protocols are active. Local overrides locked out." A crackle of static. Then Musk's voice came through, low and deadly serious. "Listen carefully. We are working on a shutdown code from here, but if the system is fully hijacked, your best shot is a manual reboot. You'll have to power cycle everything, including life support. It'll be risky." Naomi didn't hesitate. "Tell us what to cut. We're not dying up here." For a moment, silence hung in the cabin. Then Musk's voice came back. "Copy that. Stand by for hard reset instructions." And Naomi, she waited. "You've got more people down here rooting for you than you know. Bring it home." Naomi's jaw tightened. "Copy. Let's get our ship back." The capsule spun gently in orbit, drifting ever so slightly off course, a silent battlefield, where the next move would mean survival or oblivion.